Alright, what's up guys? It's Miss Clark. I'm back again, and I'm sorry I didn't post a video on Friday. It was Good Friday, so I didn't post anything because it's Easter weekend now that you're watching this. And I figured give you guys, the weekend, spend time with family, hunt Easter eggs. I hope you found a lot because the Easter Bunny definitely came and saw me, brought me some goodies. So I hope the Easter Bunny brought you everything that you wanted. Got some candy, some goodies, and all that. So we're going to jump right back into it. We left off on chapter 5, okay? And what we're going to do today is we're going to read probably till about, let's see, I'm skimming through right now. Probably about chapter 9. So we're going to read to chapter 9. So we're going to read 5 through 8. We're going to stop on 9. And then I will give you your response question at the end of the video. Alright? So let's get into it. Alright. Later on that first day, there was a commotion in the West End, at 803 Oriole Street to be exact. At the backyard of 803 Oriole to be exacter. This, of course, was the infamous address of Finsterwald. Y'all know I can't say names. Finsterwald. Kids stayed away from Finsterwalds the way old people stay away from Saturday afternoon matinees at a $2 movie. A matinee, if you don't know, matinee is like an early afternoon movie. So like 12 to 2-ish is kind of like the matinee movies, and then they cut the prices in half so it's cheaper. And what would happen to a kid who didn't stay away? That was a question best left unanswered. Suffice it to say that occasionally, even today, if some poor raggedy wretch is seen shuffling through town, word will spread that this once was a bright, happy, normal child who had the misfortune of blundering onto Finsterwald's property. That's why, if you valued your life, you never chased a ball into Guys, this name is killing me. Finsterwald's backyard. It's kind of a tongue twister, at least for me. Finsterwald's backyard was a graveyard of tennis balls and baseballs and footballs and frisbees and model airplanes and one-way boomerangs. That's why his front steps were the only unsat-on front steps in town. And why no paper kid would ever deliver there. And why no kid on a snow day would ever shovel that sidewalk, not for $1 zillion. So it was late afternoon and screams were coming from Finsterwald's. Who? What? Why? The screamer was a boy whose name is lost to us, for after this day he disappears from the pages of history. We believe he was about 10 years old. Let's call him Arnold Jones. Arnold Jones was being hoisted in the air above Finsterwald's back fence. The hoisters were 3 or 4 high school kids. This was one of the things they did for fun. Arnold Jones had apparently forgotten one of the cardinal rules of survival in the West End. Never let yourself near Finsterwald's high school kids at the same time. So there's Arnold Jones held up by all these fans, flopping and kicking and shrieking like some poor Aztec human sacrifice about to be tossed off a pyramid. No! No, please, he pleads. Please! So of course they do it. The high schoolers dump him into the yard, and now they back off, no longer laughing, just watching. Watching the back door of the house, the windows, the dark green shades. As for Arnold Jones, he clams up the instant he hits the ground. So when he clams up, that means he gets nervous and he just froze. Like he didn't know what to do. He was just like, oh no. He's on his knees now, all hunched and puckered. His eyes goggle at the back door, at the doorknob. He's paralyzed, a mouse in front of a yawning maw of a python. Now, after a minute or two of breathless silence, one of the high schoolers thinks he hears something. He whispers, "Listen." Another one hears it, a faint, tiny noise, a rattling, a chittering, a chattering, and getting louder. Yes, chattering teeth. Arnold Jones's teeth. They're chattering like snare drums. And now, as if his mouth isn't big enough to hold the chatter, the rest of his body joins in. First it's a buzzing like trembling, then it shakes, and finally it's as if every bone inside him is clamoring to get out. A high schooler squawks, "He's got the Finsterwallies!" Yeah, they yell. and they stand there cheering and clapping. Years later, the high schoolers' accounts differ. One kid says the kid from nowhere hopped the fence, hopped without even ever laying a hand on it to boost himself over. Another says the kid just opened the back gate and strolled in. Another swears it was a mirage, some sort of hallucination, possibly caused by evil emanations surrounding 803 Oriole Street. Real or not, they all saw the same kid. Not much bigger than Arnold Jones, raggedy, flap-soled sneakers, book in one hand. They saw him walk right up to Arnold. They saw Arnold look up at him and faint dead away. Such a bad case of the Finsterwallies did Arnold have that his body kept shaking for half a minute after he conked out. The Phantom Samaritan stuck the book between his teeth, crouched down, hoisted Arnold Jones's limp carcass over his shoulder, and hauled him out of there like a sack of flour. Unfortunately, he chose to put Arnold down at the one spot in town as bad as Finsterwald's backyard, namely Finsterwald's front steps. When Arnold came to and discovered this, he took off like a horsefly from a swatter. As the stupefied high schoolers were leaving the scene, they looked back. They saw the kid, cool times 10, stretch out on the forbidden steps and open his book to read. Alright, so now we're on chapter 6. About an hour later, Mrs. Valerie Pickwell twanged open her back screen door, stood on the step, and whistled. As whistles go, Mrs. Pickwell's was one of the all-time greats. It reeled in every Pickwell kid for dinner at night. Never was a Pickwell kid ever late for dinner. It's a record that will probably stand forever. The whistle wasn't loud, it wasn't screechy, it was a simple two-note job. One high note, one low. To an outsider, it wouldn't sound at all that special, but to the ears of a Pickwell kid, it was magic. Somehow it had the ability to slip through the slush of 5 o'clock noises to reach its targets. So, from the dump, from the creek, from the tracks, from Red Hill, in ran the Pickwell kids for dinner. All 10 of them. Add to that the parents, baby Dee Dee, grandmother and grandfather Pickwell, great-grandfather Pickwell, and a down-and-out taxi driver whom Mr. Pickwell was helping out. Pickwells were always helping out somebody. All that, and you had what Mrs. Pickwell called her small nation. Only a ping-pong table was big enough to seat them all, and that's what they ate around. So their dinner table was a ping-pong table. So if you've ever seen a ping-pong table, I mean, they're big. Okay? I forgot where I was at. Dinner was spaghetti. In fact, every third night dinner was spaghetti. When dinner was over and they were all bringing their dirty dishes to the kitchen, Dominic Pickwell said to Duke Pickwell, "Who's that kid?" "What kid?" said Duke. "The kid next to you at the table." "I don't know. I thought Donald knew him." "I don't know him," said Donald. "I thought Dion knew him." "I never saw him," said Dion. "I figured he was Deirdre's new boyfriend." Deirdre kicked Dion in the shins. Duke checked back in the dining room. "He's gone." The Pickwell kids dashed out the back door to the top of Rico Hill. They scanned the railroad tracks. There he was, passing Red Hill, a book in his hand. He was running, passing the spear field now, and the Pickwell kids had to blink and squint and shade their eyes to make sure they were seeing right. Because the kid wasn't running the cinders alongside the tracks, or the wooden ties. No, he was running, where the Pickwells themselves, where every other kid had only ever walked, on the steel rail itself. Alright, so now we're on chapter 7. When Jeffrey McGee was next spotted, it was the Little League field in the park. A Little League game had just ended. The Red Sox had won, but the big story was John McNabb, who struck out 16 batters to set a 2 Mills Little League record. McNabb was a giant. He stood 5 feet 8 and was said to weigh over 170 pounds. He had to bring his birth certificate into the league director to prove he was only 12. So a 12-year-old is only 2 inches taller than Miss Clark. So just like keep that in mind. And still most people didn't believe it. The point is, the rest of the league was no match for McNabb. It wouldn't have been so bad if he'd been a right fielder, but he was a pitcher. And there was only one pitch he ever threw, a fastball. Most of the batters never saw it. They just heard it whizzing past their noses. You could see their knees shaking from the stands. One poor kid stood there long enough to hear strike one go past, then threw a ball over home plate. It was still pretty light out because when there are a lot of strikeouts, the game goes fast. And McNabb was still on the mound even though the official game was over. He figured he'd made baseball history, and he wanted to stretch it out as long as he could. There were still about 10 players around, Red Soxers and Green Soxers, and McNabb was making them march up to the plate to take their swings. There was no catcher. The ball just zoomed past to the backstop. When the kid struck out, he went back to the end of the line. McNabb was loving it. After each whiff, he laughed and bellowed the strikeout total. 26, 27, 28. He was like a shark. He had the bloodlust. The victims were hunched and trembling, walking the gangplank. 34, 35. And then somebody new stepped up to the plate. Just a punky, runny little kid, no Red Sox or Green Sox uniform. Kind of scraggly. With a book, which he laid down on home plate, he scratched out a footing in the batter's box, cocked the bat on his shoulder, and stared at McNabb. McNabb croaked from the mound. "Get out of there, runt. This is a Little League record. You ain't in Little League." The kid walked away. Was he chickening out? No. He was lifting a red cap from the next batter in line. He put it on. He went back in the box. So he stole a kid's cap and put it on. McNabb almost fell out off the mound. He was laughing so hard. "Okay, runt. Number 36 coming up." McNabb fired. The kid swung. The batters in line automatically turned their eyes to the backstop, where the ball should be. But it wasn't there. It was in the air, riding on a beeline right out to McNabb's head. The same line it came in on, only faster. McNabb froze, then flinched, just in time. The ball missed his head, but nipped the bill of his cap and sent it spinning like a flying saucer out to shortstop. The ball landed in the second base dust and rolled all the way to the fence in center field. Dead silence. Nobody moved. McNabb was gaping at the kid, who was still standing there all calm and cool, waiting for the next pitch. Finally, a sort of grin slithered across McNabb's lips. He roared, "Get my hat! Get the ball!" 10 kids scrambled onto the field, bringing him the hat and ball. McNabb had figured it out now. He was so busy laughing at the runt, he lobbed him a lollipop, and the runt got lucky and pulled it. This time McNabb wasn't laughing. He fingered the ball, tips digging into the red stitching. He wound, he fired, he thought, "Man, that sucker's going so fast I can even hardly see it." And then he was looking up, turning, following the flight of the ball, which finally came down to earth in deep left center field and bounced once to the fence. One more silence, except for someone who yelled, "Yep," then caught himself. So he was about to cheer, but then he was like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna do it." "Ball!" bellowed McNabb. He was handed the ball. He slammed his hat to the ground. His nostrils flared. He was breathing like a picadored bull. He windmilled, reared, lunged, fired. This time the ball cleared the fence on the fly. No more holding back. The other kids cheered. Somebody ran for the ball. They were anxious now for more. 3 more pitches. 3 more home runs. Pandemonium on the sidelines. It was raining red, green, and hats. McNabb couldn't stand it. The next time he threw, it was right at the kid's head. The kid ducked. McNabb called, "Strike 1." The next pitch headed for the kid's belt. The kid bent his stomach around the ball. "Strike 2." Strike 3 took dead aim at the kid's knees. And here was the kid swooping back and at the same time swatting at the ball like a golfer teeing off. It was the craziest baseball swing you ever saw, but there was the ball, smoking out to center field. "Hold it, runt," snarled McNabb. "I can't pitch right when I have to go to the bathroom." The kids on the sidelines made way as McNabb stomped off the field past the dugout and into the woods between the field and the creek. They waited a pretty long time, but they figured, well, McNabb's bathroom break would probably last longer than a regular kid's. Might even make the creek rise. At last, McNabb was back on the mound, fingering the ball in his glove, a demon's gleam in his eye. He wound up, fired, and the ball headed for the plate. And what's this? A leg ball? It's got legs, long legs, pinwheeling toward the plate. It wasn't a ball at all. It was a frog. And McNabb was on the mound cackling away, and the kid at the plate was bug-eyed. Nobody'd ever tried to hit a fast frog before. So what did the kid do? He bunted it. That means he didn't swing, he just kind of bumped it with his bat. He bunted the frog, laid down a perfect bunt in front of the plate, third base side, and he took off for first. He was halfway to second before McNabb jolted himself into the action. The kid was trying for an inside-the-park home run bunt, the rarest feat in baseball, something that had hardly ever been done with a ball, and never with a frog. And to the pitcher who let such a thing happen, well, McNabb could already feel his strikeout record fading into a mere grain in the sandlot of history. So he lumbered off the mound after the frog, which was now hopping down the third base line. As a matter of fact, it was so close to the line that McNabb had a brilliant idea. Just herd the frog across the line and it would be a foul ball. Or frog. Which was what he tried to do with his foot. But the frog, instead of taking a left turn at the shoe, jumped over it and hopped toward third base. He was heading for the green fields of left, and the runt kid, sounding like two runners with the flap soles slapping the bottoms of his feet, was chucking dust for third. Only one hope now. McNabb had to grab the frog and tag the runner out. But the frog shot through his legs over to the mound and now toward shortstop and now toward second. And McNabb was lurching and lunging, throwing his hat at the frog, throwing his glove, and everybody was screaming. And the kid was rounding third and digging for home. And unbefroggable, the ball was heading back home too. The ball, the batter, the pitcher all racing for home plate. And it was the batter, the new kid out of nowhere, who crossed the plate first. And at the same time scooping up his book, twirling his borrowed red cap back to the cheering others, jogging on past the empty stands and up the hill to the boulevard. McNabb gasping, croaking after him, "Don't stop till you're out of town, runt. Don't let me ever catch ya." And that's how Jeffrey Magee knocked the world's first frog ball for a four-bagger. Alright, last one, guys. Alright. He came to be called Maniac. The town was buzzing. The schools were buzzing. Hallways, lunchrooms, streets, playground, West End, East End. Buzzing about the new kid in town. The stranger kid, scraggly, carrying a book, flap-soled sneakers. The kid who intercepted Brian Dennehy's pass to hands down and punted it back longer than Dennehy himself ever threw it. The kid who rescued Arnold Jones from Finn Sturwald's backyard. The kid who tattooed giant John McNabb's fastball for a half a dozen home runs, then circled the sacks on a bunted frog. Nobody knows who said it first, but somebody must have said, "Kid's got to be a maniac." And somebody else must have said, "Yeah, regular maniac." And somebody else, "Yeah." And that was it. Nobody, except Amanda Beale, had any other name for him. So pretty soon, when they wanted to talk about the new kid, that's what they called him, Maniac. The legend had a name. But not an address, at least not an official one with numbers. What he did have was a deer shed at the Elmwood Park Zoo, which was where he slept his first few nights in town. What the deer ate, especially was the carrots, apples, and day-old hamburger buns, he ate. He started reading Amanda Bill's book on his second day in town and finished it that afternoon. Ordinarily, he would have returned it immediately, but he was so fascinated by the story of the Children's Crusade that he kept it and read it the next day, and the next. When he wasn't reading, he was wandering. When most people wander, they walk. Maniac Magee ran. Around town, around the nearby townships, always carrying the book, keeping it in perfect condition. This is what he was doing with his life, as it often seemed to do. It took an unexpected turn. Alright, now we're going to stop at chapter 9. And I'm going to mark our spot. Alright, so what I want you to do is down in the comments, okay, so this is going to be kind of like your little question that you're going to answer in the comments. What I want you to do is down in the comments, I want you to predict what you think will happen next. What will Maniac Magee get into next? So he's already been a part of, he already made a new friend and has a book. He had the frog incident. He saved a kid from a forbidden neighbor's yard, okay, and he was a better football player than the high school football players are at it. But what kind of situation he might get into next that might get him some more attention. So predict what you think he's going to get into next. And maybe it might involve Amanda Bill. Maybe they go on an adventure together. Maybe they get into some trouble. You never know. So in the comments, tell me what you think is going to happen next. Alright, so I'll see you soon, guys. Alright, and until then, video will probably be up in the next couple days. So we'll pick up on chapter 9 here in a couple days. Alright, guys? Bye!